My name's Hector Ramirez. My global nutrition project is on New Zealand, and I'll just kind of be talking about the food culture here in the region located here in far, far away in Oceania. So the three kind of main topics I'll kind of be discussing. First off, just their general influences. Then I'll be describing their food habits, and then later on just kind of giving an evaluation of those food habits. So to begin, there's a bunch of influences that kind of impacted the culture here in New Zealand food-wise. Um, Both, traditional Maori and eventual Western settlers, both had a huge impact on the food culture here. Many of these included a bunch of Polynesian crops and European livestock. This influenced, obviously, a huge part of it, and a bunch of local produce includes salmon, lamb, sweet potato, or what they call kamara. Um, and something I mentioned is that the island is very isolated, as you can see here. Obviously, it's all the way up there in the ocean, so they tend to be stay pretty domestic. The literacy rate here in New Zealand is 99%, which is that's very good. They could this basically means um, they could easily read a nutrition label or something like that and have um, just access to basic general education of food. Um, Family structure plays a huge role here in New Zealand, and traditional Maui see food as very sacred and use the term Noa. They also tend to connect food with health, which they call haura, and I'll kind of go more in depth on this later on. They have a low context communication style. This means that you know, not depending on what background you come from, doesn't really matter. Um, you'll find it easy to understand. Just kind of adapt to basic communication norms. Now onto the food habits. Some core foods regularly consumed in New Zealand. Um, just to kind of begin, obviously dairy product is pretty uh, prevalent. They're one of the world's largest dairy producers. Both in yogurt, dairy products, cheese, all that. Kiwi fruit, obviously, and also there's sweet potatoes, which they call kumara. I would love to try one of these. I love sweet potatoes, especially sweet potato fries. So if I ever visit New Zealand, I'll make sure to try that out. As well, another cool kind of secondary option is this right here, which they call pavlova. This is like a cake-like dessert. Looks very delicious. I wish I could try some out here, but they're pretty hard to find out here in Texas. The meal patterns are similar to that of North America, as you could kind of observe. There's a bunch of similarities. They also kind of have a 3 meal a day pattern um, with the a big meal, which is kind of like a dinner at the end. Um, and obviously, like I mentioned before, very cool method, kind of originating from Maori cultures. This method called hangi or a hangi. It's basically an earth-based smoker that uses pits on the ground to kind of steam, or not steam, create steam using hot rocks and water. This has a pretty wide application. You could do it with fish, food, beef, corn, fruit, produce, all that stuff, rice. Um, and here's just kind of a demonstration of how it's being used. Um, Obviously, it may be seem pretty abnormal to most, since it's not very common to prepare food on the ground, but it's a very natural process, and it's pretty significant culture-wise, and it's a pretty common preparation method used in the region. Um, some other cool kind of methods were their preservation methods. They like to preserve large quantities of food. Some common methods, um, or more common methods, were drying food. They could do this either with embers, which was pretty smart, or just kind of depending on the wind and sun. Um, this was used for shellfish or just fish in general, potatoes, stuff like that. Another cool thing was they would gather fat from fatty birds, or commonly the TT. Sorry, hiccup. And it was pretty smart. And they would basically just store all the fats for later on when they needed it. And as I mentioned before, they do use a lot of spiritual healing processes known as Rangoa Maori, um, more commonly using native herbs such as manuka and karamiko. This is the manuka plant right here. Um, these were kind of mainly used just to treat a very common disease in the region, whether that be eczema, asthma, ringworms, stuff like that. The obesity rate is 33% in adults, which is pretty high. Um, this can obviously lead to pretty big problems like diabetes or obesity, which leads to diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Um, this is probably more likely due to the nation's shift towards um, high sugar beverages, goods, fast food, processed foods, all that stuff. Obviously, not only occurring in New Zealand, but um, other locations in the world, especially here in the United States. Maybe to avoid this, some smart things would be, just to kind of encourage, more whole foods and natural produce. Such as the Kamaru sweet potato yogurt. Obviously, huge dairy nation, so that'd be a pretty good idea. Create a bunch of alternatives, which seems to be pretty popular nowadays. And also just kind of discourage um, the rapid spread of processed, or not discourage, but just kind of limit. And maybe to kind of help that, you could lower the prices on whole goods, just so people have wider access to that kind of stuff. And just addressing it, or the idea of addressing it, just helps. Um, just to kind of fix these increasing rates. But yeah, that pretty much sums up my presentation here on the country of New Zealand. Um, very wide influences, both from inside and out, and it still continue to change as you can see. And we also have a lot in common, I'm sorry, New Zealand has a lot in common with um, us here in the United States, which I thought was pretty cool. But also, use a lot of their own kind of methods and techniques that they've created to prepare their own food and have nice meals as we all do. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Again, my name's Hector Ramirez, and thank you so much.